Brodes Media.
Yo, before we jump into the action, let me tell you a little something about my friends over at Green Lawn Fertilizing. Brooklyn daydreams about her lawn every second of the day because she wants to play. And I haven't done a good job at taking care of my lawn. So what did I do? I called the experts over at Green Lawn Fertilizing. They sat me down. They became essentially family. It's unbelievable. The communication, the relationship, it's so strong. And bada bing, bada boom, they're giving me treatments every X amount of weeks to make sure my lawn is going to flourish and be the most beautiful lawn that my daughter has ever been able to see with her two own eyeballs. And let me tell you something. You got to make sure you join me. And the first round is so important to lay the groundwork that Green Lawn Fertilizing is offering 2 free treatments and 10% off for you right now. They are based in the Philadelphia area and best in the market. Experts in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. It's unbelievable how knowledgeable they are. They've created their own custom blend to make sure your lawn is rocking the way that it needs to. So make sure you check out the link in the description, which will take you right to their website through me. It'll say, hey, bro, sent me here. Make sure you check them out and get started. Green Lawn Fertilizing. Do not be a fool. Make sure your grass is as beautiful as mine. What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Bleacher Report as we sit here another evening and get ourselves prepared for what the Eagles are going to do at pick 32. Now, there's a couple of names I want to get into, and I want to read some of their draft profiles because I have my eyes set on a couple different players. One is new. And one is new because of a report that was blasted by Daniel Jeremiah. Now, he's been all over social media. I'd say maybe the last 48 hours or so, there's been a lot of people biting on what he has to say. I'm always sort of up in arms at this time of the year when it comes to this because you don't know what is a smokescreen. You don't know what is being leaked on purpose for other situation to try and get another team to do something. Whatever it is, you know, you play the game. And when you have someone as strategic as Howie Roseman, there's no doubt about it. Over the last couple of reports by Adam Schefter, he's the mouthpiece of Howie, so you know that is part of a plan as well whenever you get information from him. So I'm just cautious whenever I sort of break down exactly what is being said by those out there. Let's start with this, though, before we get into any prospect, any potential new Philadelphia Eagle that we are about to see on Thursday, unless they unfortunately trade out of the draft pick, and then we have to wait till Friday. Jordan Mailata was on with the WIP afternoon show, and this quote just really stood out to me because this needs to be what they embrace as they get ready for a Super Bowl following season. It's not easy. There's a reason why teams don't just constantly go there, unless they are wired in a way that makes no sense. And we'll find out if this team has that or not. But he said, we know how to handle adversity. Do we know how to handle success? I want that to be what is sort of plastered all around the NovaCare complex because it's not easy to be the reigning Super Bowl champions. It's not easy to go through that grind of a year, and then you have to follow that up. While other teams didn't make the playoffs, their body was recovering. They were in the weight room. Your body was going through hell. Cam Jurgens could barely move his back. He spoke a couple days ago. He said, I finally feel like a normal person again. Well, others got to get their back right weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks prior to you. That goes a long way. They're fresher for camp. You went through war and you got the ultimate prize, which is what matters. But how are you going to be able to handle coming off of a Super Bowl win? They need to be locked in differently. It needs to be a different message from top to bottom. But I really loved the we know how to handle adversity, do we know how to handle success sort of view, because that's the way they have to attack this. It's no more nobody believes in us. It's no more of that crap. You found a way when you were 2-2, week 5 bye week. Let's reestablish and recalibrate who we are as a team. And kudos to you because you rattled off 10 plus straight. You went on to win a Super Bowl. Amen. But it was a lot of nobody believes in us. That's not going to fly as a motto this time around. So what do you do to get this team in the right headspace to go after it again? And you know what, truth be told, sometimes when you just have the right athletes in place, it just happens because they're so competitive, because their drive is so real, because AJ is special, Devontae is special, Saquon is special, this line is special, Sirianni special, Jalen special. Maybe it's just, you don't have to worry about that. It's not about plastering messages along the walls in the NovaCare complex because their hunger is enough. And truth be told, if you are a team that does go back-to-back, if you are a team that does have built-in sustained success, that's probably the answer. So maybe I just organically found out exactly what I need them to do, and that's be themselves. Because if they are who I think they are, then it finds them. The motto or the approach, like whatever you want to like really sink your teeth into, it'll find them because they just have it when they go to the NovaCare complex every day. Whatever the words become, whatever they bite into, it's inevitably going to be there because when they show up, boom, automatically they have that fight and desire, if that makes sense. So for whatever that's worth, that is something I want to throw out there. Here's some news that's been rumbling a bit. And I actually took a caller on the radio about last weekend with this theory in play. If they are going to trade Dallas Goedert, and everything is indicating towards a relationship breakup between us and Goddard, should they look at maybe LSU's tight end Mason Taylor in the first round at pick 32? I would not like that. I do not think that you should be taking a tight end with your first round pick. There would be too much defensive end talent still available. There would still be too much defensive tackle talent still available. Now, if they were to trade back, gain other assets, and then somewhere along the way in the second round, they pick up Mason Taylor, and that's what they elect to do, you could sell me that more. But if they stay put and they're just chilling at 32, and with what I expect to be there is available, some of these names that we have discussed over the last few weeks or so, if they're there, these defensive linemen in the trenches, whether it's on the edge, whether it's interior pass rush, and someone who can stop the run as well, do a good combination of both, I value that tremendously more than replacing Dallas Goedert with my first round pick. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think they can improve from Grant Calcaterra, because without a doubt I do. I think you can do better. Now, I think he's good enough to hold the fort down with all the other unbelievable talented players on the offensive side of the ball, and with this offensive line, you should still be able to flourish without skipping a beat. So let's not act like Grant can't do anything out there. I don't like that usage. I really don't. I don't like the usage of a first round pick being with tight end, knowing I like to build within my trenches and get some help getting after the quarterback. I'll put it this way. Losing Sweat, Williams, and BG, you have to replace that more than replacing Goddard, and putting in Grant is more serviceable than not picking up a defensive lineman and then trying to produce without getting any help. Unless, and this is where the creativity of Howie Roseman comes in, if all the noise about them maybe making a draft day trade and them going after a Thibodeau or a guy like that, is it possible where that's where they get their pass rush help and then they can get their tight end in the first round? I guess I'm not ruling that out as a hypothetical. And again, if that happens, and maybe I would feel differently in the moment, but I like the idea of going trenches. So let's go with this. I've been on the record now for a while saying, all things considered, you don't know exactly how the board is going to fall. If I can have an ideal world, what would I like to happen here without it being outrageously obnoxious? And some may think this is outrageously obnoxious, thinking this person falls on their lap, but we've seen crazier things happen. If you can get Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss, I think that would be like my preferred realistic sort of, whether you stay there at 32, whether you trade up to 28 because he's falling, however it goes, I think that would really be an awesome guy to slide in next to Jalen Carter. Now, I want to read some of his scouting report strengths and a couple of his weaknesses. This is courtesy of NFL Draft Buzz, if you are unfamiliar on what he brings to the table. He has an explosive first step off the snap, which allows him to consistently beat offensive linemen into their set and dictate initial engagement, which shows up repeatedly against both pass and run. His natural leverage, he's a winner who plays with outstanding pad level and core strength, allowing him to control the point of attack and reset the line of scrimmage against single blocks. He displays impressive lateral agility and change of direction skills for a 305-pounder, making him a nightmare on stunts and twists where he can utilize his quickness. He's got a masterful, he's masterful at using his compact frame and natural leverage to get underneath taller guards, driving them backwards while maintaining his balance and power through contact. So some intriguing things here. There's probably 5 or 6 other bullet points, but I just read off the top ones. Here's a couple of weaknesses just to make sure I do both sides of it. I'm not trying to make it be sold that this guy's the next coming of, the greatest defensive tackle to ever exist. But here's some weaknesses. Can get caught playing too high at times, especially when fatigued late in games. We've seen that with Jordan Davis and his conditioning for a while, just his ability to, kind of break down later in games, fatigue, just in general. I think the Jordan Davis experience hasn't really hit the way they wanted to, and they probably expected, whether they did their wrong homework, but they probably expected him to be able to add to that skill set to be able to help with the pass rush more, but clearly Jordan Davis hasn't been able to do that. But we did see the fatigue late stuff happen with Jalen Carter in his first campaign, and he cleaned that up rather quickly for his second year. But when he does get fatigued, he allows offensive linemen to get underneath his pads and control the point of attack. He needs to develop more consistent hand usage in the pass rush. He often relies on pure athleticism rather than refined technique to win his battles. I think that's just something that once you get to the league, once you get to the NFL, once you get to watch Jalen Carter, and, some of these guys had the luxury of watching Fletch, and Cam Jurgens got to watch Jason Kelsey. When you're around pros, when you're around guys that just help win the Super Bowl and do it at the highest level, this is where you can see insane growth from, 1 year to the next, or after a 3-year window. You can see how an interior lineman really polished up a lot of his traits, where he went from someone who's an intriguing athlete that has a lot of raw ability but just needs to be tamed, and then someone who's able to put it together. Sometimes you can see those qualities. It just takes time to get the advancement going, and knowledge, right? You got to have some information on how to actually secure your battles and winning your battles one-on-one in this league, snap after snap after snap, when you look at what's going up against you. Says here, below average arm length, and it shows up when trying to disengage from blocks. He can get stuck on blocks longer than it is ideal. So there's just a few notes on that. But this is where things get a little bit fascinating, and going to 2 Daniel Jeremiah quotes that have been flying around town lately. He mentions Howie Roseman potentially trading up for Georgia edge rusher Jalen Walker. And it was really because a lot of teams are trying to trade down. They don't think that there's many talent out there. Maybe there's a lot of good talent, but not elite, insane. Once you start moving past the obvious Travis Hunters, Abdul Carters, but once you start getting through the middle wave and whatnot, it's not as if in their eyes, and of course we can look back in 10 years and they could have been totally wrong. They don't think that this is just filled with studs left and right. So some teams are going to be looking to trade down because of that, gain other assets for future drafts, for different rounds and this and that. And maybe when Howie Roseman looks at everybody doing one thing, he'll do another. Maybe he trades up to go after a Jalen Walker, who some are saying, and very similar to the Nolan Smith, I don't know if he's going to be able to make it in this league. And if you already have a track record of being able to flourish the way Nolan Smith did at the end of last season, what he was able to produce in the playoffs, that's a scary, scary dog, man. That's a scary force. And if you already know that you can sort of have that style of, I don't know if that'll work, turn out to be very, very good, very, very beneficial, and one of your best players and game wreckers in the playoffs, then there should be no fear at all if you can duplicate it and do it again. And he's obsessed, Howie, that is, with the SEC and with Georgia Bulldogs. So if it ends up going that route, I can't be angry with that mentality whatsoever. Here's some strengths on his scouting report, again, courtesy of NFL Draft Buzz. He has developed impressive pattern matching skills in zone coverage, showing natural feel for route combinations and spacing. He's got a quick first step off the edge, and it translates to devastating pass rush ability, demonstrated by his 3-sack performance against Texas in 2024. He shows rare bend and ankle flexion for a linebacker his size, consistently able to flatten around tackles when maintaining speed to the quarterback. Natural block destructor who uses powerful hands and leverage to keep himself clean, particularly effective when working through traffic. Brings scheme versatility with experience both as an edge rusher and off-ball linebacker in Georgia's multiple defensive looks. Exceptional closing speed and space, verified by his blazing 4.50 40 time that puts him in the 94th percentile at his position. Now, here's some of his weaknesses. Still developing his instincts as an off-ball linebacker, occasionally showing hestation. Can get caught playing too square against offensive linemen, limiting his ability to disengage quickly. Limited starting experience with only 11 starts at the collegiate level, so it may require some more patience as his NFL career transitions. Now, I would think that they would look more in that, let's get after the quarterback type role, but that's just what's being talked about out there, and I'm the messenger. And, if they feel they can get up and get someone who is way better than the value that they're selecting at, Jalen Walker plays at a school like Georgia and whatnot, like, I'm all in, man. You can convince me without a doubt that that is a route to go. And Daniel Jeremiah also touched on this, Malachi Starks, and how amazing the fit is. But the one potential I'm not necessarily sure about this move is something that I've even mentioned with the tight end not too long ago, and that is, will you ever weigh that, the safety position? How good Starks is, too. This is no disrespect on what Malachi can do for you. Line of scrimmage over secondary, if you guys have other players who are still on the board right around the same spot as Malachi Starks. So essentially DTD and over safety. If you think these guys are all in the same range and they're all in the same tier and they're sort of playing around the same ceiling, just in respected positions, and their greatness can be very similar, just different positions on the football field, then you're going to go with somebody in the trenches over the secondary. But I don't disagree with that, but here's just sort of my counter that I don't know if I necessarily even buy into it fully. I'm just kind of talking through it, okay? Because I thought part of last year's success, like we've seen in years past, specifically the Jonathan Gannon season, right? Where you saw an offensive line for the other team just get exposed by what the Eagles were able to do with their pass rush. 70-something sacks. Wow. And then James Bradberry gets to sort of benefit from that. Now, I don't know how we got the crazy disparity from that year to the year following for James Bradberry, but my point is, your secondary wasn't that great. Your pass rush was what secured 99% of your defensive dominance. This most recent season, your secondary, with your all-pro linebacker play, with Coop coming in for Avonte Maddox after a few starts this season, with Quinyon being such a lockdown guy and Slay on the opposite, and with Nakobe Dean when he was healthy prior to his injury, I actually think their ability to hold the coverage allowed for some of the defensive ends, the defensive tackles to create pressure. Now, I don't want to make it seem like it was the equivalent of the 70 sacks up front, because I think it was almost like a good marriage. I almost think it was 50-50 and it was a good split. But I guess my point is there is a way to sell. If you were to have a lot of players in that same range and in that same bubble, and you went with Starks, that if you bolster up the secondary, then you don't need to have the same powerful defensive front, because if your coverage can hold up for a reasonable amount of time or an above average amount of time, then guys who are good or guys who are okay at pass rush will have the time to get home, compared to breaking up the play instantly, snapping your fingers. And keep in mind, we still got Jalen Carter, we still got Nolan Smith, so that is going to happen. You still have awesome talent, but that's sort of the mentality, if that makes sense. Remember, I said I don't know if I even necessarily buy this. I'm just talking out loud, and that was sort of my first instinct when I heard line of scrimmage over secondary. I do believe in line of scrimmage over secondary without a doubt, but just something to think about as you process what may go down on Thursday. So that's sort of where I am today. To summarize a little bit and tie a bow on this puppy, Walter Nolan is sort of where I really would like for them to go. But if they trade up and go after a Jalen Walker, if they go and get a Malachi Starks, whether they trade up for him, whether he falls on their lap, I mean, I'm all good with a lot of these options. A lot of these pass rushers, Boston College, 16 and a half sacks. There's just a lot of interesting names that I think are going to be available to help out this defensive front and help out Vic Fangio after losing some really important names. And I think that's the route I prefer. But we'll see what they do. Not a big fan of tight end, but you do got to remember this Dallas Goedert thing is most likely going to be happening. And I think it's going to be a very active draft day for Howie, whether that means he trades down and doesn't pick, but then he makes some trades for some vets, or whether he moves up to try and pounce and go after one of his guys that he deems is, definitely significantly undervalued by everybody else, and they see him as a top 15. They can get him at 27. Let's go after our guy. I think there's going to be a lot of action, a lot of dancing around, a lot of moving and grooving, because, well, that's essentially the definition of Howie Roseman football. It is called Howie season for a reason. I'll never forget, what was it, Crayvon LeBlanc? Remember him in the slot when he put the ski mask on? And it was ski mask season. I always think of that when this time comes around with Howie Roseman doing his thing. So with that, we are going to wrap things up here. Thank you guys all so much for kicking it with me. I greatly appreciate it. You guys are phenomenal. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your evening. Go Birds.